Madam Web will definitely be on the list of worst movies to release in 2024 because of its awful editing, bad CGI, mediocre acting, and just lackluster story. And most people seem to agree since it's getting roasted by moviegoers and critics alike. But we now have box office numbers for this film, and Madam Web Gets Squished posts worse opening day box office than Morbius and the Marvels. I have a few different things that I want to show off, but before we get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, follow me on social media, and consider supporting through Patreon or via YouTube memberships. Now, I don't think any of us really expected Madam Web to do particularly well, given the fact that going into it, there really wasn't a lot of hype, and all of the teasers and trailers for this movie over the past few months have gotten completely destroyed by audiences. It just looked like the CGI was really bad. It seemed like a lot of the acting was subpar as well, even though they kind of have a star-studded cast for this movie. And they were probably hoping that this was going to blow up in popularity, but unfortunately for them, it is doing worse than the Marvels, which it seems like was their direct competition with this film. This is a Bounding into Comics article that I wanted to reference. The opening day box office numbers for Madam Web are in, and to the surprise of absolutely no one, very, very few audiences were interested in Sony's latest misguided attempt to build out their Spider-Man without Spider-Man film universe. You can have a Spider-Man universe that doesn't solely center around Spider-Man films. I've said this for a while, but I enjoyed the first Venom movie, and the animated Across and Into the Spider-Verse films also did pretty good. But at the same time, they have tried over and over and over to do these movies, and very few of them have actually been successful. But I do think that you can have a Spider-Man film universe if you have Spider-Man in it, but you do, movies that kind of branch out from it, but you do need that kind of core Spider-Man movie in order to establish the universe. And this Madam Web movie, the rumor is that it was supposed to be part of the Andrew Garfield Spider-Verse, but then at the kind of last minute, they decided to make it a solo film, and they decided to make it another live-action universe, which of course just makes me not want to go and see it and pay for it, like many other people leading up to its release, because why would I give them another chance to make a mediocre movie that, in the grand scheme of things, really doesn't matter? I mean, look at something like The Eternals, right? They created that movie. They thought it was going to be the next giant phase of the MCU. All of these characters were going to be part of it, and it's been left behind in the dust. Even though it is part of the MCU, it's just another movie that nobody really cares about, and has only been referenced in 2 projects, and we're talking about on like newspapers. It says, though, per box office analytic outlet The Numbers, the Dakota Johnson-led Bait and Switch managed to pull in only $6 million, roughly $1,508 from each of the 4,013 domestic theaters which screened it on opening night in its Valentine's Day debut. Valentine's Day typically does pretty good at the box office. Movies that release on this day typically do pretty decent. So they were probably hoping that that would end up pumping up the numbers, but that is not the case. As you can see over on Box Office Mojo, it is currently sitting at an $8,204,619 pull. These are the numbers that we have so far, and they are abysmal. We do not have any worldwide totals yet. This is just domestic, but one would assume if it's doing this poorly domestically, it's probably not doing much better anywhere else. And according to the numbers, as you can see, February 14th, it released and brought in $6,051,012, and that's roughly $1,508 per theater. But going into February 15th, it saw a 64% drop with only $2,153,607. And we do still have the weekend to go until there's more numbers. And of course, a Thursday and a Friday probably won't do as well as the weekend, even though it did release on Wednesday. Thursday, but at the same time, it will be interesting to see if it stays this low throughout the weekend, or if it ends up getting, a little bit of a bump, because people do want to go and see it. But I do not think that there is a way for them to make their money back on this movie. Now, we don't know exactly how much the budget was, but we can make a fair estimate based on what they've told us. It has a budget of less than $100 million, we were hearing, but in order to be a box office success, Madam Web needs to earn around $200 million, meaning that it probably costs about $80 million, because of course that would be double plus a certain percentage on top, and we know that movies of course need to make more than just double, so it probably had a budget of around $80 million, and judging by these first numbers, it is going to be nowhere close to the $200 million they need in its entire box office run. It seems like Madam Web is probably going to be one of the biggest financial disasters of the year as well. It will be interesting to see as time goes on, but clearly everybody is united in hating this movie. The All Critic is a 13%, Top Critic is a 16%, Verified Audience is a 54%, and an All Audience is a 42%. And keep in mind, Verified Audience scores, we've caught Rotten Tomatoes manipulating these numbers quite a few times over the years since, of course, they changed their policies. So it's interesting to see that even that number isn't being, really manipulated to be like a 70 or a 75. I mean, a 54 is still not like the worst score ever, but anything under a 60% just goes to show that the movie really is trash and most people dislike it. And these scores have been going down since the film's release day. I mean, it's only been a couple of days, right? But the scores have been consistently going down, and I just don't see a way that this movie could be saved at this point. But honestly, it doesn't deserve to be. There are some times where I watch movies and I think that, the audience scores and of course the critic scores are a bit off, but I have to be honest, I am right there with a solid, like 30%, and that's being generous. This movie truly had nothing good going for it. The editing was abysmal. There were so many times where clearly they had recorded dialogue later on, and of course they didn't want to do reshoots, so they edited the actresses, new line over their mouth, and of course just maybe having them go to the studio and say it 10 times and then picking the one that sounds slightly better than the one that was actually, originally filmed. Moments like that were also very cringeworthy. The writing was just really mediocre. All of the, the lines that they put in this that were supposed to be like inspirational quotes didn't come off well. The fact that, all of these spider girls and spider women were really only in their suits for like 5 minutes of this movie, if that, was just a terrible decision. And they did have a pretty star-studded cast for this movie. I mean, Dakota Johnson, Sydney Sweeney, Celeste O'Connor, pretty big names in Hollywood right now. So you'd think that this would have been a decent movie, but these actresses just had absolutely no synergy together. And of course, I can't blame these actresses for, the entire failure of this film, because if they were given a genuinely bad script, which they were, there's not much that they can do there. And of course, it's not like they're editing it, but it's hilarious to see this epic failure happen, because I think we all expected this movie to do pretty poorly, this girl boss film to really disappoint in terms of numbers. But it will be interesting to see over the weekend how the numbers change, if, the box office totals continue to tank, if the audience scores maybe even go up and some people end up enjoying it. Only time will tell. But for now, that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.